They say the cold preserves everything. Out here, in Boreas, it doesn't just preserve bodies, it preserves silence. Grief. Ghosts. It keeps them fresh like frostbite, never letting them rot away into forgetfulness. The wind cuts through my coat like razors. My fingers are numb, the skin beneath them probably cracked. I stopped checking days ago. There's a kind of peace in that, when the pain dulls into a constant hum, like the distant whir of engines under snow. I listen to that hum now as I march alone, crunching across the white crust of the world that used to be home. My name is Elias Kresnik. I used to map rock strata for the Republic. I studied thermal signatures, tectonic drift, pressure points under dormant volcanoes. My hands held brushes, not rifles. That was before the war. Before the flare corps, before the border raids, before they bombed my village into gravel and ash. Before Luca disappeared. He was the only reason I stayed sane after the conscription. My little brother, curious, sharp-eyed, always building things. He'd make models of birds from copper wire, whisper facts about tectonic plates and fault lines like secrets too sacred for textbooks. He followed me everywhere. Until one day, he followed me into war. It's been a year since his unit vanished in Kasker Valley. The official term was non-recoverable combat loss. It sounded clean. Bureaucratic. Like they'd lost a shipment of boots, not a squad of human beings. No bodies. No black box. Just gone. I convinced myself he was dead. Not because I wanted to, but because it was easier than believing he might be out there, suffering, changed. But 2 days ago, we found something in the snow. A drone. Hesterian make, scorched along the edges like it had fallen from orbit. Our patrol was just supposed to retrieve it and torch what remained, standard protocol. But I cracked it open when no one was looking. Stripped it down to its core. It flickered once, then displayed a still frame on the cracked screen. A face. Pale. Thin. Eyes too wide. Luca. The image was distorted, like a dream caught behind glass. But it was him. His mouth was half open, frozen in some expression between terror and numbness. He wasn't wearing Renverian colors. Not Hesterian either. Just gray. There was a glint of metal behind him. Tubes. Walls that looked like surgical steel. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The next morning, I put in a request to command for reassignment to forward recon in the Kasker sector. They denied it. Said I was too valuable mapping cave systems near Fort Arlon. I told them I wasn't asking. Captain Jorek found me in the supply tent, alone, packing dried rations and a stolen sidearm into my kit. He didn't stop me. He didn't smile, either. Just handed me a thin envelope. Classified. Unsealed. Inside were grainy photos, surveillance intel, lights moving under the ice. Towers that weren't on any satellite maps. A structure, half fused to the terrain like it had grown from the stone itself. He said, whatever they're doing in Kasker, it isn't war. Not anymore. I nodded. He lit a cigarette with hands that shook too much for a soldier. If you see your brother, he said, don't bring him back. Mercy comes in strange uniforms now. I left camp that evening. The sky was already darkening. The cold bit harder once I was beyond the outer patrols. I didn't look back. The terrain shifted quickly as I descended toward the valley. Hills like ribs, cliffs like broken teeth. Snow buried the wreckage of old battles, shell casings, torn fabric, a helmet split in two like a cracked egg. I passed through an old checkpoint where someone had carved a message into the concrete wall, "We were alive once." By the second day, the world had gone quiet. No gunfire. No engines. Just wind and the occasional rumble under the ice, like something was turning in its sleep beneath me. I slept in the remains of a burnt-out mech walker, curled up beside the faded skeleton of its pilot. He still wore his tags. I left them untouched. Maybe he wanted to be forgotten. On the third day, I reached the ridge. And I saw it. The Casker Valley stretched before me like a scar across the land, wide and deep, rimmed with snow-covered peaks. But what lay within it wasn't natural. The ice glowed, not white, but orange, sickly, pulsing like veins filled with lava. Towers rose from the valley floor, their shapes wrong, angular and jagged, humming faintly as if alive. Between them, black cables ran like arteries. And in the center, a dome. It was massive. Dark metal shimmered beneath the frost, and steam hissed from vents along its base. It didn't look like a military installation. It looked like a heart. A mechanical heart beating under the snow. I stared for a long time, breath fogging my visor. My knees trembled, not from exhaustion, but from the certainty that whatever was down there wasn't built for human use. Not anymore. I scanned the horizon. Drones hovered in fixed patterns. Automated turrets blinked in standby. No human patrols. Either they didn't need them, or there weren't any humans left. I set up camp behind a rock ledge and unpacked what little I had left. Half a protein bar. One charge left in my radio. The battery was dying, and so was I, in increments. I pulled out the photo again, the one the drone had shown me. Luca, behind glass. Eyes blank, mouth slightly open, like he was waiting for someone to speak first. I whispered, "I'm coming, Luca. Whatever they did to you, it'll find you. I swear it." The wind howled in response. I didn't sleep that night either. I watched the dome, trying to find a pattern in the lights. Trying to see if someone, anyone, walked those metal catwalks. But no movement came. Just the steady pulse, like a waiting predator. At dawn, I buried what I didn't need in the snow, spare gear, my maps, a journal I didn't have the strength to finish. If I was going in, I had to be light. Fast. The cold no longer mattered. The pain had retreated deep into my marrow, quiet now, like a dog that's learned its master's gone for good. Only purpose remained. And a name I kept repeating under my breath, like a mantra. Luca. I tightened my scarf. Slid the sidearm into my belt. And I started down the slope toward the mouth of hell. Not to fight. Not to kill. But to see. To know. To face whatever was left of the boy who once chased hawks through pine trees and asked where the earth ended. Because I think, somehow, he already knew. And he went there first. The snow stopped falling as I crossed into Casker, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. The air turned heavy, too still, too sterile. Not the cold I knew. Not the kind that bit and howled. This was different. Hollow. Engineered. The kind of cold that hums just beneath the skin. I moved like a shadow across the frozen valley floor, ducking between charred husks of machinery and twisted cables. The towers up close were worse than they'd looked from the ridge. Not built. Grown. As if the ground itself had been infected and forced to bloom metal. The dome loomed ahead, half submerged in the glacier. Vents hissed periodically, releasing bursts of steam that reeked of copper and oil. Somewhere inside that structure, somewhere within that beating iron heart, was the reason I was here. I didn't know how I was going to get in. But the world has a way of answering unspoken prayers, cruelly. I heard the clink of boots before I saw them, two figures emerging from the mist, dragging something heavy between them. A body? No, an unconscious man, alive, bound, his head lolling forward. They wore no insignia, only composite armor with matte gray plating. Their helmets were insect-like, blank-faced. I slipped behind a ridge of ice, held my breath, and waited. They paused near the dome's perimeter. One of them tapped something on the wall, a panel slid open, and they dragged the man inside. The door sealed behind them. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. Then I followed. It took me hours to circle the perimeter, searching for a weakness, a cable port, anything. I found it, barely visible near a vent, a collapsed maintenance shaft, partly covered by snow and frost. I cleared it with my knife and slipped inside, crawling like a rat through the earth's arteries. The smell hit first. Sterile, acidic. Like hospitals and burnt circuitry. Then the light, dull amber pulsing through vents along the walls, illuminating metal that was too smooth, too seamless to be hand-forged. This place wasn't built with wrenches. It felt printed, exhaled, as if some god machine had breathed it into existence. The shaft widened into a tunnel. And then, I heard voices. Real voices. I followed them to a narrow grate overhead and looked down into a cavernous chamber lit by flickering monitors and towers of glass columns filled with pale, floating shapes. Limbs. Nerves. Faces. Some were whole. Some weren't. In the center stood a woman, tall and lean, adjusting something on a console. Her head was shaved. Her hands were scarred. She didn't look like military, more like a field medic with dead eyes. Another figure stepped into view, a man with a prosthetic eye and a long rifle strapped across his back. He looked up suddenly, straight toward my grate. "I hope you're not lost, friend," he said without emotion. I froze. He pointed toward a corner. "Vent shaft leads down here. Come in before the drones do." I hesitated for half a heartbeat, then dropped through the grate. He didn't flinch. "You're Renvarian," he said, not a question. I nodded. "Elias. I'm not here to fight." He shrugged. "Neither are we. Not anymore." He introduced himself as Merrick Varn. Former sniper. Discharged after a spinal injury. His eye was a patchwork of cybernetic glass and broken metal. The woman was called Tala. No surname. No past. She barely spoke, but when she did, her words cut sharp and fast. They were part of a unit once, Renver's 22nd Recon, but after the Battle of Harn's Ridge, they went rogue. Too many civilian casualties. Too many lies. Now they called themselves the Hollow Crows. Not rebels. Not heroes. Just people who knew the war was lost long before the news said so. They showed me what they'd uncovered. A central control core beneath the dome. A massive neural network powered not by silicon, but by people. Not just prisoners, scientists, engineers, conscripts. Wired directly into the system. I stared at a monitor showing live brain activity feeds, pulses, spikes, patterns. Tala tapped a screen. "This one here," she said, voice dry as sand. "Been active for over 11 months. Pattern irregular. Not like the rest." She enlarged the feed. The neural ID was encoded, but I knew it. I knew it before she said it. Luca. Somehow, they'd integrated him into the core. "He's not dead," I whispered. "Not alive either," Merrick said quietly. "He's processing. Probably the targeting system." I turned to him. "Targeting what?" He sighed, scratched his beard. "The Iron Sky. ID heard the name in rumors. A relic from before the ceasefires. A kill satellite platform, able to vaporize entire cities from orbit with flare core amplification. It was decommissioned. Buried. Or so we were told. They're bringing it back online," Tala added. "And your brother's brain is the uplink key." I sat down, hard, on the cold floor. My lungs felt too tight. My heart thudded like it was trying to escape. Why? I asked. Why him? He was an engineer, Tala said. One of the brightest minds in flare core mapping. They probably caught his unit during the retreat and realized what he could do. Wired him in. Is there a way to get him out? Physically? Maybe. But if we sever him, the Iron Sky might launch. Auto failsafe. I stared at the console, at the steady pulse of his brain signature. Not a heartbeat. Not really. But still him. Still there. Merrick knelt beside me. We have a plan. Blow the core. Take down the dome. Collapse the valley. It'll buy time, set back the project years. But we won't get him out. I felt nausea rising. You're asking me to kill him. I'm asking you to save a country. I stood. You've never met him.